Welcome to the Personal Injury Lawyer Podcast. I'm Clark Speaks. This is the anatomy of a personal injury case.
Doctor, you had mentioned that there were two things that you were discussing as it relates to household services, and you described one of them. Can you
Sure.
continue your?
Well, the example you gave about your mother, part of the example had to do with household services, and that's what I talked about. But you also have what's called a life care plan. Let's say somebody is injured, and they require some sort of a life care, medical care. Not only in the past, but let's say somebody to help them with dressing, washing their hair, these sort of things. Those sort of things are not household services. Household services are things like housework and washing your car, painting your house, and that sort of things that you would expect that somebody could be employed at. But again, most people have very active other things that they do around the house. They get dressed. They take care of themselves. They maybe watch TV. That sort of thing. The inability to do that is typically what's called a life care plan, where if somebody is required to come in and assist with those type of activities, as an economist. Now, you have specialized life care planners that will come out and look at this, not only in the past, because more than likely it's a past, somebody has paid for these sort of things. They've paid for medical costs. But a life care planner will come out and then try to put together a plan for the rest of that person's life. If they're catastrophically injured, they may need medical care, they need surgeries, they need therapy, all these sort of things. And they may need somebody to help them do their daily activities. So as an economist, what we do is we look at that life care plan and then we put a value associated with that. That again is a present value analysis, but it's a fairly difficult one because the different components in a life care plan have different historical inflations. For example, medical care, drugs have been going up much higher, let's say, than perhaps having somebody come in and take care of you on a daily basis. So when I do a life care plan analysis and put an economic value associated with that, I have to look at the historical inflation rates related to a lot of different categories associated with the life care plan.
You brought up two things that I really wanted to talk to you about, and I think that they're really important. So let's talk about the household services component first, and then I want to come back to this life care plan that you discussed. Now, the household services, when I think of those, I think of those more as household chores, the things that we have to do, cutting our grass, doing our dishes, changing light bulbs, changing air filters, doing laundry, doing those types of things. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny when we're talking about it in a case of people tend to sort of skip past that if you're not careful, But if you're an injured person who's now got to figure out how to have these things done, I mean, what it does is it reminds me. I think back to last night at my house, for example. So I've got 3 kids. I'm married. I have my in-laws are in town because one of my children is graduating from high school. And so I think back and I look, so we had breakfast, we had, I think everybody was out for lunch, and we had dinner, and we kind of hung out in the kitchen after it was over with. And everybody sort of, enjoyed themselves. And then I think, okay, at the end of that, we've got 3 choices, like you said. We can leave it, let somebody else do it, or clean it up ourselves.
Right.
And so every day, those chores that it takes to make sure that your home is clean and sanitary and comfortable it's a time-consuming endeavor. And I've wondered before, goodness gracious, man, wouldn't it be so great to hire somebody to
Right.
take care of those things, But then you think those things are never ending. What would they do? You've got to wipe up your countertop. You've got to clean your dishes. You've got to take out the trash. You've got to, if you've got a pet, you've got to walk the dog. If you've got to, they're just never ending. You've got laundry. You've got to put your clothes in the dirty clothes. You got to fold your clothes. You got to put them back in the drawers. You got to clean your
Wash your car. It goes on and on. Yeah, and some people do more of that sort of thing than other. I mean, if you're working, you tend to do less of that. If you're not working, if you're a stay-at-home mom, let's say, you're doing more of that. Some people choose to do a lot. I mean, there are some people that repair their roofs, that cut their own trees down and so it varies from person to person. I mean, we certainly do have some standards, and we know a lot about what people do on the average. But the average is an average. Everybody is unique in these type of things. And it's very important because household services many times are actually a greater loss than the income. If you're a stay-at-home mother who is 50 years old and now you plan on spending it with your husband or something like that, and you're injured, you didn't plan on going back to work. You weren't working in the past. And so almost all of your economic loss, really, when you think of it, now there's different types of economic loss, but related to production and activity is really going to be household services. And got another thing that's important to do is household services go to the end of your life expectancy. You do things around the house, basically to do the housework to clean, basically into your life expectancy, where your loss of salary and income is for how much longer you're planning on working. And that's usually a lot shorter. Even if you retire at 65, you still might live for another 20 years. And so that's a loss of household services for another 20 years. And so household services many times for retired people, for people that aren't working, tends to be extremely large and many times larger than the loss of income.
Well, so that makes sense, and then also that adds to me another question, which is, so I have a client who we've worked with for a long time, and we're very close to him and to his family, and they have a very, very, very close family, and he was paralyzed in an accident, and his daughter, who's just a phenomenal human being, she steps up. The things that she's done to take care of him have been remarkable and inspirational. And so she's contributing so much on a daily basis to taking care of him and to doing the things that need to be done to make sure that he's healthy and happy and safe. And then I wonder, what happens? What happens if she was hurt? What happens if she can't do those things anymore? Or another example, let's do it in reverse. And what happens if a child is hurt and has special needs, and the parent are doing all these things to take care of that child, and then later, when the child's 40, 50 years old, those parents die. Now what happens to the child? Who's going to take care of that child then?
That's a good point. And remember, I talked about some of the most difficult things to do as a forensic economist. They're trying to figure out the mitigation is one of them. You raise the issue of children and people that don't actually have started into the workforce and have an established salary or a lifestyle of household services and so forth. Trying to figure out what a child would have done but for an injury is probably one of the most difficult. There's several ways of doing it. Again, we do have some published data right now that helps us, but everybody is unique. Again, published data uses averages. Well, certainly we know, for example, that a child is likely to go into a profession and earn a certain amount of money based upon a number of different things. And some of these things I can look at, I can put into a model, but let's say they're in high school and somebody in high school is injured, but they were planning on going to graduate school. Intentions are a very important part. Once you get into high school, intentions become a very important part to try to predict what somebody could have done in the future. But again, looking at the future when you don't really have a strong past to rely upon is extremely difficult. And so, figuring out the but-for income from a child or the but-for household services that person could have contributed as they've gotten older and gotten married and stuff like that, for somebody who hasn't already established that pattern of life is a very difficult thing for a forensic economist to do. And you got to make sure that you do rely upon the good, solid published research to be able to do that.
Well, there's another piece of this too, especially in our world, which is we're using this information not for the purposes of of academics. We're using this information for legal purposes, and we have an additional constraint that we can't introduce evidence that is speculative. A judge won't allow us to present that to a jury. So that makes it even more difficult because it seems like to me that if we were looking at it from academic perspectives, theories become plausible and important and possible. In a legal context, we are limited by that speculation. And so does that play a part in your...
Yeah, it does. And that's the importance, again, of making sure that you use published material, because once something's published and well-established, then it becomes less speculative and certainly is allowable. So again, when you're looking at the future, trying to predict the future income of a child, there are models that have been published based on data. It's just not theory, but it's actually looking at the data that try to give a good prediction about if somebody's in a certain situation, the parents make a certain amount of money, they live in a rural area, an urban area, there's a number of different components. You can put it into a formula, and these formulas have been published and well established in the forensic economic literature. That overcomes that problem of speculation. You're always making predictions. When you think about it, anytime you talk about the future, there's an element of speculation to that. What you need to do as a forensic economist is make sure when you talk about the future, it's well established. It's published, it's well argued, there's established, recognized theories associated with that. And that overcomes that element of speculation that the judges are concerned about.
Well, let me ask you this. So back to our example of maybe a parent that has a child that is taking care of them on a daily basis, or a child who's injured and they have a parent that's taking care of them on a daily basis. Do you have ways of quantifying that and accounting for the fact that maybe those parents won't be there forever?
Sure.
Or maybe that child will have other obligations that take them away from being able, and who provides that care then?
Well, the example that you gave probably would have been more of a life care planner to do something like that. So if you have a parent taking care of an injured child, the life care planner would put a value associated with that and say that, well, that is worth a certain amount of money that the parents are doing it now, but if the parents leave, you'd come in and you'd hire a person on a daily basis to take care of that. That's part of the life care plan aspect. As a forensic economist, I can put a value to that. I can discount that into present value, but that's probably more something that a life care planner would do that as an example.
Well, so one of the things that I find interesting, you did a report for us recently, and one of the things that I thought was really interesting was in relation to the life care plan that you just described. And you touched on it a few minutes ago, and I wonder if you could go into a little bit more detail. The concept is this. We've talked about time value of money, and generally $1 today is worth more than $1 later. And so what tends to happen is when we put together a life care plan in a catastrophic case, maybe it's $10 million or something. And what will happen is the defense lawyers will come back and say, well, if it's $10 million in the future, that means you got to discount it over 25 years, and that means it's $2.5 million today. And then you come back and you say, that's not right, that you're doing this wrong. And the reason is because the increase in cost of medical care, tell me if I'm saying this right, the increase in cost of medical care actually outpaces inflation. So instead of discounting that, you need to actually add to that $10 million. And instead it might be like 12 or 13 or $14 million because of that, of the way that the cost of medical care increases faster than the cost of other.
No, I think you said it exactly right. And that's why I look at probably 20 different components of a life care plan, because when you look at the rate of inflation, which is the pace that things increase, prescription drugs increase at a different rate than non-prescription drugs. Let's say physical therapy increases at a different rate than going to see a physician. And so you have to look at these different components, which is what I do. And I take a life care plan and I put it in these different components as to trying to determine what the inflation rate would be for these different elements. And then you you add it all up, and there are some elements of a life care plan and medical care that do go up faster than you can discount it, in which case that would be more valuable than if you were just simply do the multiplication. But there are other ones that can be discounted. So the key thing is to look at the different components in a life care plan and be able to do the appropriate inflation as well as the discounting associated with these different things. And that's the proper way to do a life care plan.